Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I am, as ever and as always, your host, Low Runner. Today we'll be playing a game that nobody's ever heard of, the first Devil May Cry game. Naturally, I wanted to start with that and describe a little bit of what that actually means. Just on the off chance you haven't heard me talk about it before, which is weird, if true, because I've actually talked about it quite a bit. It's like this. There's technicalities, and then there's realities, right? So technically, Mega Man 1 is the first Mega Man game, and Final Fantasy 1 is the first Final Fantasy game, and Legend of Zelda is the first Zelda game. But in reality land over here, that's not really true. Instead, the first Mega Man game is Mega Man 2, the first Final Fantasy game is Final Fantasy 4, and the first Zelda game is Link to the Past. Now, I actually have a terminology for this. I call it codifiers. Something that actually codifies a franchise, right? I mean, was Wolfenstein 3D the first Doom game, for example? And yeah, Morrowind being the first Elder Scrolls game. Good example. So, of course, this is all relevant for here because Devil May Cry 1 was a random assortment grab bag of ideas by a talentless hack who was trying to just make up whatever they could. And Devil May Cry 2 was the worst game I've ever reviewed. Barely. So between the two, when did Devil May Cry actually start? Well, here. Because if I actually did a bit of a random assortment poll of a couple people over the past couple of days, and found exactly what I was expecting to. If you think Devil May Cry, what people tend to think of is the stuff that was introduced in 3. Essentially, none of the tone or style or even gameplay of the franchise really got going until 3, and Itsuno showed up and started putting his fingerprints on things. Now, one of the questions I got many times was, how could DMC3 possibly even exist if DMC2 was as terrible as it was? Well, DMC2 sold quite well. There are other factors, but that's the reason. DMC1 was popular, so DMC2 sold. In fact, at initial launch on the PS2, DMC2 sold better than DMC3. And the reason why DMC3 sold as badly as it did is because of DMC2. I know I've talked about this every single one of these, but I'm going to bring it up every time it's relevant. Now, one moment, I need to jot down a sub. Thank you, Giga Pudding. Always appreciate. No, Aspros, and I don't plan to. There's nothing worth reacting to there. So, having discussed all that, and yes, obviously, there's no such thing as universal rules of the universe. Water is still wet. Moving on. So, this is a very, very common trend, and it absolutely informs us. But you're probably still wondering, hang on. Given that, how did DMC3 sell at all? Well, two big reasons. Number one, a massive marketing campaign. One of the bigger ones at the time, in fact. I actually linked the trailer in chat, in Discord chat earlier today. But that was just the first trailer, of which there were many. And a lot of it was trying to focus very, very heavily on two big things. One was the atmosphere and tone thing, which DMC3 would establish, as I've already mentioned. And the second was the gameplay. If you actually watched that trailer, not that I blame you if you didn't, it actually showed off some of the combo moves you could do in a trailer in 2004. So there was some unusuality with regards to how they were advertising things. So that's cool. They did actually do several things completely different under the hood this time around. First of all, we actually have a completely new camera tech. I'm going to try to show it off on display once we get there, but just keep in mind, they threw out the old camera entirely and just programmed a brand new algorithm, or whatever you want to call that, for how the camera operates. I know it's shocking, right, as it is. The second thing they did was they tried to focus very heavily on making sure the controls were different. Let me try to explain that a little bit. So in DMC 1 and 2, you could do, like, attack, attack, and then you could, like, hold left or right or whatever, or you could hold L or R, and it would slightly change the attack. But that was it. That was, honestly, the same kind of crap that the old beat-em-ups on the NES and the arcades did. Nothing really new or fancy. DMC3 decided, okay, why don't we make it so you can do left attack, and then right attack, and then a neutral attack, and then right attack, and then left attack. And they basically took a lot of inspiration from fighting games to allow you to have a great deal of control over exactly how your combos played. And I'll be trying to show off some of these as we go. I will fail miserably, because I haven't played this game in about 15 years, I want to say, something like that. It's been a while. The last thing they did, because I'm being thorough here, is they decided to do this brand new thing that had just been invented like 5 years before. It's called motion capture. And so a lot of the cutscenes look a lot better and a lot smoother because that's actually an actor walking around with a rig on doing the animation for them. So, woo, as they say. Now, there is, so I mentioned tone and I mentioned gameplay. There's one other big difference in DMC3, and this would carry forward. DMC3, 4, and 5 all have the same variants, and that is that they have a story. Now, if you're going to say, hold up, DMC1 had a story, then I'm going to call you a liar. And if you say, hold up, DMC2 had a story, then I'm going to call you a liar. No, they didn't. What they had was a story asterisk. DMC 1 and 2 had a story the same way that Mario Galaxy 2 had a story. I love Mario Galaxy 2, but point made. Now, you might wonder why I'm frozen on this very screen. So I want you to imagine 2005, I think. Fire up the PS2. You've got the disc in, one disc. And all right, everything's cool. Everything's awesome. And you go ahead and see this. That's the same as it was in the last two.
Sweet dreams.
And let that be our tone setter.
You've heard of it, haven't you? The legend of Sparta? When I was young, my father would tell me stories about it. Long ago, in ancient times, a demon rebelled against his own kind for the sake of the human race. With his sword, he shut the portal to the demonic realm and sealed the evil entities off from our human world. But since he was a demon himself, his power was also trapped on the other side. I never believed it. I thought it was just a child's fairy tale. But I discovered that this so-called legend wasn't a myth at all. Sparta existed. How do I know? Well, I met the sons of Sparta. Both of them. Though the same blood of their father flowed through their veins, the two battled each other fiercely like arch-enemies. It seemed as if they derived some sort of twisted pleasure from this brotherly fighting. But in the end, only one was left standing.
Sorry, not open for business yet.
Also, that phone doesn't have a cable.
I haven't even picked a name for this joint, and I'm already getting calls.
Correct, although that's been fixed in this one, Mirage Fire.
You a customer too? Well, if you want to use the bathroom, help yourself. The toilet's in the back.
Is your name Dante, son of Sparta?
Where did you hear that?
From your brother. He sent this invitation for you. Please, accept it.
Invitation, huh?
Just dragging the dude.
This party's getting crazy. Let's rock. Don't bet on it.
Okay, so hold up. Just gonna pause for 1 second here. If you ever wondered, thanks to the new system of how we do reviews, obviously 3 is the most positives a specific element can get, but there's ways for that to be branched out into nuance. For example, a cutscene might get 3 positives, but there's multiple elements of a cutscene, like animation, or directing, or camera work, or whatever, right? So if you ever wondered what a more than 3 positive intro looks like, you just saw it. Let's actually go through that for just a second. Establishment of tone is obvious, but when I say that, what I want to mean is, yeah, sure, it's silly and fun, but it's also comedic, but it's also serious. In fact, DMC3 probably manages Yakuza effect better than most of the games in this franchise. So, there is actually a story, as I mentioned earlier. It is even a serious story. It's a very heavily character-driven piece. But it's silly, and it's not afraid to make fun of itself. All of which are critical elements to what this franchise is now being established as being. So there's our tone setter. It's also very self-consistent. That's true, Hazardous. But I want to draw your attention to little details. Arkham just kind of running his finger along the table as he's going by. Or as he was looking at the necklace that Dante was wearing, Dante was still chewing on the pizza that he'd taken a bite of earlier. Or the fact that there's just this moment of when the thing doesn't set up, and so forth and so on. Like the point is, there's a lot of nice details in the animation, which makes sense because motion capture, as we've already talked about. But motion capture can only do so much. Motion capture requires direction, and you get the idea. And yeah, the fact that Dante was consistently more concerned about the pizza than most of the rest of it, the fact that he just drags the dude who has a scythe embedded into his chest as if it's nothing. All of this, so DMC1's intro was good, but this intro is fantastic. This is one of the better intros I've seen. It also helps to establish the beginning of Dante's character arc, because, as Rax points out, Dante is more concerned about his pizza than anything else going on. And that's his character right now. He's an irreverent youth. He doesn't give a damn, probably about anything at the moment. And honestly, if we're being completely blunt, we're probably seeing the beginnings of the depression that is endemic to Dante's overall character right here. Just completely covering over all of it with a and that's his character at the moment. But anyways, so let's jot down a couple things here. One thing I wanted to talk about was there was a guiding principle behind the development of, I almost said Mass Effect 3 for some reason, of Devil May Cry 3. This principle will vary a little bit in the future games, but it was something they've talked about repeatedly in almost every interview I've ever seen about this game. They wanted, and Itsuno himself specifically wanted, to do cool stuff in cinematics, not just because it was cool, but because they wanted to give the player ideas. Or, if I could say this slightly differently, if they wanted the player to feel cool. They wanted it to be a whole thing where you could do that stuff, where you can be awesome, where you can pull off these amazing tricks, as opposed to just watching them happen on screen. That topic will come up again when we get to DMC4, but the point is, almost everything you just saw him do is something you can do. Almost. The most obvious one is riding an enemy around. You actually can hop on an enemy and ride them around, for example. Notice how much it's bothering him.
You're gonna pay for that.
Listen, I don't know about how you put on your coat every day, but this is how I do it.
Isn't it a magnificent view? The greatest minds of their time, those who revered evil, constructed this glorious edifice. Now, after 2 millenniums of confinement, it can at last fulfill the purpose for which it was intended.
That's none of my concern. Did he have it?
Of course, he's taking good care of it. After all, it is the only memento left from the mother you both lost.
But he has no idea of its true power.
And that's Vergil in a nutshell. I mean, I could point out the obvious: Dante is red and Vergil is blue. But the real difference in the style between the two, I'll do this briefly, just for you, Blue Alex. The real difference in style between the two is that Dante doesn't actually give a crap about what he looks like. He's wearing some boots, some pants, a coat. He doesn't care. He's throwing on some clothes because it's clothes. Vergil has a coat which has filigree and inlay and style to it. He has a formal shirt underneath. It's actually a belt, boots. Everything is very, very much something that, yeah, he looks like a literal aristocrat. Simply by looking at the two immediately, from just their fashion and nothing else, you can tell which one's personality is which at a glance. Now, ironically, that also kind of informs their character arcs in several ways. Vergil, the aristocrat, is the distant and cold one, but he's also the one who is least connected with his actual feelings himself. Whereas Dante, the rocker, is the punk, in the more traditional sense of like the cyberpunk kind of a thing. Which I know I'm explaining badly, but whatever. Again, the tutorialization, I'm not going to ding the game for this, but this is not... This is not good tutorialization. It's just functional tutorialization. It literally pauses the game to be like, hey. Okay, cool. Like that. Hey! I actually managed it. I screwed it up immediately, but at least I managed it. I'm gonna clip that.
Easy, Fido. How about I take you out for a walk? Come on, puppy. Let's go. It's showtime. Come on.
Notice the music is actually timed with the cutscenes to make sure that it starts up the moment the cutscene ends. Love the timing and coordination on that. Notice his attacks actually get more aggressive, and the timing of them changes as we get further into the fight. Oh, when I say I hate Arkham, I don't mean like he's a bad character. He's a great character. I hate his guts because he is, I would say, tied for the most disgustingly, and I'm going to stress that word for just a second, disgustingly evil character in this series. Just, yeah, he is just the worst, you know? I don't want to give away too much now, but The other one who is in the running for that is the Pope. I actually don't even remember his name in 4. There is at least one villainous character who is absolutely getting a positive in 4. And you know who it is. One of the character variants between Vergil and Dante. Vergil's just kind of loose, right? There's a whole lot of motion and energy to how he talks. He doesn't just sit there and chat at you. He's constantly just kind of moving around, and there's just this sort of looseness to how he operates. Vergil, by total contrast, is a stiff board. Very minimal, very efficient movement. He hardly ever actually adjusts his pose or stance unless he needs to. It's all very tightly controlled. So, yeah, sorry. You can do this. As you can see, you can switch at any time, but it doesn't actually perform the switch until you've finished whatever your current input is.
Blast off!
Whoops. There's a better way to explain it. I had to finish the whole Wong 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 Kong before the sword actually switched, even though I switched like a solid second earlier. I don't work that way, Ghost Rider. I mean, I could give you a super vague, oh, such and such is my favorite, but that's a super vague answer, and honestly, in my experience, usually doesn't conform to reality. If you go through with a full analysis mode and actually review the game, excuse me, if I go through it with analysis mode and then review the game, then what I have is a much more cohesive opinion about the game in question. I can't believe I even timed that right. I even did that on purpose. Holy crap. I think all the cool stuff I'm going to do this particular playthrough is all going to be accidental, but I think I'm okay with that. So if you've been paying attention, I keep referencing 5 characters, but we've only seen 4.
Violence, devil boy. Oh, wait. Better listen to what others say, lad.
There's number 5.
This tower here is very sturdy. You see? Your tricks will do no good. No good!
Zip it, or I'll pierce that big nose.
That could be a problem. Just hear me out. You've got nothing to lose, right? My name is Jester, and I know a thing or two about this place. That thing there is a power generator for this entire sector. In order to open the door, you need to apply a little something to it first. Do you know what that is, kid? Or is that too difficult for you?
Get to the point, or you want to keep on dancing?
Actually, I prefer a sword to be my partner. May I have this dance, my lady? Bingo! That is what the something is. Remember that, kid. Write it down on your hand if you don't trust your head.
I see. Thanks. You still piss me off, though.
Jester, who was originally called Joker, by the way, is assuredly going to get at least a positive for the actor and for the motion capture, because he is very well presented, regardless of my personal opinions on the character.
Look, brother, it's been ages, but we finally have company. I see that. We must entertain our guest. You're right. We have to be gracious hosts. What should we do? How do I know? We need to come up with something. Brother, our guest is sighing. Sigh? What is sigh? Well, a sigh is when...
Enough already! How long are you two gonna keep carrying on like this? In case you didn't get the hint, I'll spell it out. Your guest wants to go through. Got it?
Our job here is to guard this door. That's right. We can't let you pass. Wait! Yes, wait! We have been waiting for a long time! Yes, a very long time. For someone stronger than us. Someone who can control us. My name is Agni. And my name is Rudra. You shall take us with you. We could be a great help to you.
Okay, but on one condition.
What is it? Name it!
No talking.
Fair enough. As you wish. Impressive.
No talking. Good.
Also, I don't mean to give praise to something that kind of bothers me, but you notice how they've managed to make the wall look organic without actually making it look organic? They just add so much... I forget what that's called. The styling, you know? And the, like, the leaves and the little... whatever all that crap is. Yeah, it looks like a giant plant, which makes sense for several reasons. But it manages to add to the whole aesthetic of the place without just leaning on organic equals evil. Agni and Rudra's main shtick is that they have coverage. So when it comes to weapon design in these kind of games, we talk about reach and we talk about range, but we don't actually talk about coverage all that much because it usually doesn't come up. To explain a little bit, as you're paying attention here, this weapon has decent coverage, but mostly in one specific direction at a time, whereas this thing is always hitting all around us. It effectively turns the hurt box into our entire form. We're just hitting everything around us with these weapons. Doesn't do quite as much damage as some of the other weapons, but who cares, because we're hitting everything all the time. Make sense? Even the aerial attack kind of indicates that coverage thing I mentioned. Now, the cost is, of course, it doesn't have nearly as much reach or range, with one notable exception. This is the R forward, which you've actually seen me use several times because it's a closer. It actually will home in, too. You can obviously steer it, as I'm kind of demonstrating here. But it'll home in on something as well and just be like, "Hua!" And it does have a little bit of reach. And the other thing about this one, too, I've already shown this off with Cerberus quite a bit, because you can chain everything into everything else with Cerberus. Whoops, I hit the right buttons here. But even more than that, this weapon right here can chain everything into everything so smoothly. So we've talked about this in Mortal Kombat 11, but also in the God of War series. There's three relevant points to an attack. There's the wind-up, during which nothing's happening, the hit period, during which your attack can collide with the enemy, and the cooldown, during which you can't do anything as you're waiting for the attack to finish. These weapons have really short wind-up, really short cooldown, and huge middle section, so a huge portion of these attacks is capable of doing damage, and there's a very, 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 very tiny window, like literally 3 to 6 frames, in between attacks where you can immediately start the next attack. By contrast with this thing, certainly some of these attacks are long, but if I do, for example, that, it's a really long, by comparison, I guess it doesn't look near as long, but trust me, when you're getting down to frame timing, that is a much longer delay timing at the end of the animation, right? Sorry, I just try to do my due diligence and actually explain the weapon design in this game, because it's pretty good weapon design.
You showed up.
You sure know how to throw a party. No food, no drinks, and the only babe just left.
My sincerest apology, brother. I was so eager to see you, I couldn't concentrate on preparations for the bash.
Whatever. At any rate, it's been a whole year since we last met. How about a kiss from your little brother? Or better yet, how about a kiss from this? So, this is what they call a heartwarming family reunion, eh?
You got that right. This may be fun. Why do you refuse to gain power? The power of our father, Sparta.
Father? I don't have a father. I just don't like you, that's all.
The twin thing is a lot more obvious here.
Foolishness, Dante. Foolishness. Might controls everything. And without strength, you cannot protect anything. Let alone yourself.
Finally have it.
Yes. Now the spell Sparta cast will be broken. see a devil inside you has awakened as well.
Wait! We should leave. For the moment, we have all that we need.
So much of that speaks for itself. I almost feel silly trying to talk about it. The similarities in, like, it's really well done. What do you want from me? Did you notice that despite their massive differences in approach, style, and mentality, they actually fight almost identically when it gets down to it? Like when they both drop all presumption, wrong word, all airs, right? When they just drop the visage and pretense, there we go, that's what I'm looking for. They fight almost identically, and both lean towards the style, both lean towards the sword usage, sword approach. It's extraordinary to watch the de-evolution of their fighting style throughout it. There's also the fact that, as we already mentioned, Vergil wasn't actually trying to hurt or even, kill or even hurt his brother, as we've already mentioned. I could talk about how Arkham is clearly on top of everything here, shows up the moment that they get what they actually need. And then once Dante unlocks his Devil Trigger for the first time, Arkham then at that point is like, no, we should go. We should go. We've got the... So, okay, Vergil's cool. Let's get that out of the way. But there's one thing I don't like about Vergil, and that's that he's kind of a one-note character. He is still coping. And so his method of coping from the loss of his mother and everything he's already gone through is to seek power. And that's kind of it. That's Vergil right there. You could argue that that's important in future games, but the point is that that's kind of all we've got for Vergil. But there is some characterization there, and we can see why he thinks that way, why he wants this way. Given what we know in the future, it would make a lot of sense to me if Vergil was specifically seeking power because of, shall we say, recent events. Meanwhile, Dante, yeah, has gone completely the opposite direction of just... It's also been argued, I personally agree with this, that Vergil specifically was pushing Dante in this scene in order to push him to actually try to be better, and of course to unlock his Devil Trigger, more power, yada yada. The choreography is fantastic. It's a rare game that can have someone slice up bits of bullets as they're flying at them, line them up on the ground, and then shoot them like a golf club back at the other person without that being silly. I mean, it's a little silly, but you get my point. It's all part of the shtick. Clear effort is being put into making this whole thing maintain the aesthetic of ridiculous, but not to the point of cartoony. It's something that, is, I would say, a hallmark of the series, which of course only really started with 3. And yeah, the whole scene is very serious and very character-driven. The music emphasizes that, the rain emphasizes the voice acting. To quite mention this during the previous cutscene, the idea that the two of them have probably been having the same conversation off and on over however many years, And they probably paused that conversation about a year ago. A year passes, and they just continue as if nothing has changed or happened, just getting right back into it. It's probably exactly why Dante, with nothing to go on other than, I have a message from your brother, immediately beelined for the tower, presuming his and for his brother. And of course, Vergil is setting up the trap because he's after the amulet, so we get a bit of a hint that there's something else going on. There's just so much going on in that cutscene. That, like it or not, is a triple positive cutscene. So I wanted to type up some thoughts, because now I got to talk about the boss fight. So, ironically, that's a very simple boss fight, but as I've said so many times, simple is not bad. That boss fight was... So you've figured out your particular gimmick by now, right? If you're a trickster, you know how to dodge. If you're royal, you know how to block, or parry more accurately. And if you're doing either of the others, I hope you've figured out how to do those, because Vergil... it's something that the series will become a hallmark from now on. Arguably started in 1, but it officially is codified here. Fighting against the other person is almost always going to be the hardest, or at least most interesting fight in the game. Vergil will just counter, parry, and block and dodge all of your crap the entire time, and has absolutely no problem taking advantage of openings that you give him. Something I showed off intentionally and otherwise several times during that fight. He also, himself has huge openings and weaknesses, so the most common pattern for that fight, and which I only accomplished successfully a couple of times, was you attack him, he takes advantage of your attack and counterattacks, but his counterattack is actually where he's weak. You have to prompt him, resist or endure the counter, and then get back into him. And you might think, well, that just sounds easy. First of all, raise eyebrow. But second of all, if you're paying attention, most of his counterattacks have an added effect of knockdown. It knocks you down and kind of cancels all your animations and takes you another second to get up. Why is that relevant? Because if his counterattack connects at all, you've lost the opening. Again, very tightly, very well designed. It is ironically pretty beneficial to be full berserker on that fight, if you can handle the counters. And simply baiting him will eventually convince him to start attacking you, which will also give you other openings. Obviously, I didn't show that off, but whatever. Ironically, Lady and Dante actually have a really good dynamic to each other. It's one of the reasons I regret we haven't seen more of the two in the future. I keep holding out just a little bit of hope that someday they might actually do something with that. I mean, considering how 5 ended, Rax, I think it would be a perfect time to dig into that. Just have the next DMC, have DMC 6 be Trish and Lady. Like, you know, spoilers, but wouldn't that make sense? Oh, and I guess Nero. I guess. What's with all the spider webbing? I've decided to withdraw the question. So, to describe this... I should take a note. To describe this in gameplay design terms, this is the artillery of the weapons you get access to. It takes a moment to prep. In fact, unlike every other weapon in the game, you actually have to draw it before you can actually start using it. And it's most useful when charged. Audio cues for when it's fully charged, of course. But you want to be nice and ready for this at a distance. Now, there is a way to deal with enemies in melee, which is that. There's a couple other things you can do, too.
Where am I? It's dark. I can't see anything.
You're still alive, I see.
Mary? Is that you? What's happening? Where's your mother?
My mother? You killed her, remember?
Yes. That's right. I killed her. With my own hands. What horrible thing have I done? I was too weak. I succumbed to his influence.
You mean you were possessed? Father?
Yes, I was manipulated. Manipulated by a devil named Vergil.
Vergil?
He's attempting to bring the demon world back to this modern day. A world that Sparta once sealed off.
Sparta? I thought he was a myth.
If the demons return, this world will be thrown into chaos. Stop him. Stop Vergil.
Me?
You're such a sweet child. Just like your mother.
Father! Father! Vergil.
I would say Arkham is much more evil than Mundus. Trihexia. What I love about that scene is it's constructed and built up properly, such that we, the audience, 100% know he's lying through his teeth. Just absolutely lying through his teeth. We know it's a complete manipulation. And yet, he is doing it perfectly for the person who lacks the information we do, which is her. So, it's kind of a variant on the bomb under the table situation. We know the bomb's there, and she does not. Bomb showing off Royal Guard. So, Arkham's gone. Lore shock.
Oh, I'm dying!
Little close.
Excuse me?
You remember Ifrit, right?
Are you gonna go?
Yes, I'm going to finish him off.
Well, you might as well forget it, because you're no match for him.
Regardless, I must go. I had a chance to stop him before, but I couldn't. I'm responsible for all this mess.
Responsible Does it bother you that much?
He's my father. Besides, who else can undo what he's done? A demon like you wouldn't understand.
Father and family, huh? Well, I'll go too. But you better hurry if you don't want me to take all the credit.
Okay, plot coupon got. Oh, that air. Perfectly without dying. No, without dying. If you're paying attention earlier, I mentioned a comment about how your demonic form has a little bit to do with you. There's other mentalities that go into it, but at least a little bit of it is your personality, your mindset, what kind of soul you are, etc. So we saw that Arkham originally turned into a Jester, but that was his failure. And of course, the more proper term for that Jester is actually the Fool. Well, he couldn't really hold on to it. So the actual devil form for Arkham is a giant cancerous mass. And that is extremely appropriate.
Dude, my father wasn't so hideous.
I love how they're still competing even here. So yeah, we lose Devil Trigger and we lose B. So no blocking for me. This is probably one of those things that's a story positive and a gameplay negative, because I kind of agree with that. Alright, come on, there we go.
I'll try it your way for once. Remember what we used to say? Jackpot. Not very classy for someone's dying words.
Wait. Please. Do you really want to shoot me? Can you shoot me? Your own father? What have I done wrong? Even heroic Sparta sacrificed a woman so that he could become a legend. I wish to be a god! And I sacrificed one miserable human being for that reason. That is all. Was that really so awful? I have some unfinished business to take care of. Help me, Mary.
Mary died a long time ago. My name is Lady. Goodbye, Father.
No!
Okay, now could I get a drum roll, please? God of War 3 scored a 202.34. For perspective, God of War 3 only had 17 on the story axis, but had a colossal 52 on the gameplay axis. It kind of stopped on the gameplay axis. Devil May Cry 3, dramatic pause, gets 190.09. That's still an extremely good score. Doesn't quite get up to the heights of God of War 3. But that's an extraordinarily good score. Yeah, that's... Remember, we're discussing inches amongst miles. And yeah, this is a frickin' PS2 game. That's another good way to put that. Final thoughts. So this is going to sound weird, given that we just gave this game a colossally huge score. But I have to say, this game wasn't as good as I thought it would be. I think a lot of why I had put it so high in my list back when I was doing the top 30 thing was because of the story. Oh, don't mistake me, there's a lot of good gameplay on display, but there's also a lot of bad gameplay. That's 14 gameplay negatives. That's not a small amount. But that story, you know me, right? Story and gameplay merged together are what make the really good games. And having a game that's fun, that is engaging on the story axis, pretty much automatically elevates it to me in the vague, you know, what's your opinion without actually auditing it or reviewing it kind of a way. So it makes perfect sense to me, in hindsight, that this game is that good, or is what it is, and I thought of it as this good, even though actually going through it, it's not quite that high. Now to go play DMC. No, I also have to say that it'll be interesting to see what 4 and 5 do, having so immediately gone through 3 and really think about how the series will develop going forwards. Because Monday, we'll be going ahead and we'll be covering Devil May Cry 4. For now, I'm exhausted. So, I'm going to go rest my hands. See you next time.